Nope.
All right, thanks for bearing with us here. Good morning and welcome back to the continuation of last night's public hearing. I'm going to first roll call members of council to establish attendance. Councillor Paquette.
Here.
Good morning. Councillor Walters.
Present.
Welcome. Councillor Banga.
Back on the job.
Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Katerina,
Good morning.
who's been busy. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. Councillor Zadig.
Good morning.
Councillor Essinger.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Henderson are not able to join us today. Councillor Knack.
Good morning again.
Good morning. Councillor McKean.
Present.
And Councillor Nickel.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we recessed last night, having heard from those in favor. I understand that based on those discussions and the question and answer, that Councillor Caterina has a referral motion at this time that he's prepared to bring forward after some discussions with the applicant. Once we get it on the floor, we, as we did yesterday, may be able to get a bit of commentary on referral from the applicants and a bit of commentary on referral from ideally not all, but a couple of folks, because the referral may satisfy some of what we were hearing from the community as well. Again, really not to prejudice that discussion since we should get the motion on the floor, but rather than resume on speakers, Councillor Caterina has helpfully prepared a referral motion. So I'm going to go to him for that now, and then we'll get into debate on that. So, Councillor Caterina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so the referral motion is that bylaw 19685 and charter bylaw 19687 be referred back to administration to return with a direct control provision that reflects the R8 zone, except with a reduction in height, and to work with the applicant to engage with the residents of the Cromdale Community and Community League and return to a future City Council public hearing.
Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Banga. Okay, so that referral is on the floor at this time. Mr. Garside, on behalf of the applicant, on the question of the referral motion.
Your Worship and Mayor and members of Council, we support the referral application and are looking forward to doing a better job of engaging with the community and arranging for this DC zoning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Garside. Questions for Mr. Garside? Councillor Caterina?
Yeah, maybe not so much a question, but I want to thank you and Mr. Daly for considering this and your commitment to working with the community. The height restriction and that can be worked out, and I think what we heard from the community last time around in particular was that the height was one of the major issues that needed to be addressed. But I think with future consultation with the community and a DC application will give the community much more confidence that they've had a say in what happens, and can be assured that what is in the DC will be actually what happens. So I want to thank you and Mr. Daly for that agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Caterina.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Garside? No? Okay. I'm going to, my interpretation of the sort of correspondence and feedback from the last public hearing, as well as more recently coming into this one, is that some referral was the will of at least some members of the community to have further engagement and discussion about, for example, a direct control. But I'm going to hazard and just test that by seeing, because the only person I have registered here from the Community League is explicitly is Anthony Oliver. Are you there, sir?
Hi, Your Worship. Yes, I am here.
Did you want to provide any comments on the question of referral? Not asking you to represent all of the other speakers, but as the Community League has done some engagement and organizing around this, I thought I'd go to you for perspective, if you're okay with that.
Sorry, yes. Sir, if I may, I'll just, perhaps what would help is if I can go through the consultation process, the dates. It's not so much, well, it's not just the height of it, it's also the size of it, the RE8 itself. So perhaps it would serve council best if I provided sort of the context here in terms of what happened with consultation, so that can inform what happens next with consultation with the community for a direct control. which certainly that has been on the table. That is something that we asked the applicant to consider, which they rejected. It's now clear that they're accepting that, which is favorable in a sense. But again, it's not just simply height. And so if I can outline the dates that we did consult and what happened, it might become more clear what our issues really are.
Well, to the extent that the referral motion asks for consultation going forward, I'll give you a few more minutes but I would suggest that if you can focus your comments on what you would like to see by way of consultation going forward. If you wish to address that by speaking about what happened, that's your choice. But the question that's before us here right now is the referral. So go ahead.
Sure, I'll try to focus my submission, sir. My part of the presentation, of course, was simply the specifics of the engagement. So I'm not prepared this morning. I haven't prepared this morning to speak directly to what to what's proposed, but I'll do my best. So, Your Worship, Councillor Caterina and members of council, back on May 5th, Councillor Caterina referred this back due to a gap in engagement. The information you received yesterday, the community has significant concerns with what council was told. But I think what the applicant told you yesterday in and of itself showed you and I would submit should lead you to find that this is really about money. It's not about land use or good fit for the land. The space is tiny, the community's tiny. The proposed RA8 does not fit. It requires 1 hectare, which that space is 50 meters by 60 meters. It simply does not fit. North of 112 Avenue, certainly. But the consultation process, when following the May 5th referral, the community had appointed 2 representatives, myself and Shauna Ferragini with land use planning, myself as a lawyer with some consultation work. And our purpose was to create a fair process and one one where there was active engagement, not passive process-oriented engagement, but active engagement. And it started again with the community appointing 2 representatives to figure out who the applicants were. And so that started with us going to the city administrator, who advised us that unequivocally that there would be plans provided by the applicant. The administrator explained after the public hearing, he phoned Bart Golightly and said, you need to introduce yourself. You need to make clear who the parties are. And that further that the applicant has engaged an architect and will provide renderings. Well, that turned out to be completely incorrect and uninformed on the part of the administrator, because there certainly were no plans or plans to obtain plans. And we found that out on May 28th. And I met with Ebenezer. And on that date, it sounded promising. They had wanted to meet on June 7th or 14th, and we pushed for an earlier date. And so we met on May 28th. And on that date, I think what was relevant that came out of that really was that there would be a good faith effort on their part to provide us with plans. We learned that Ebenezer owned the property since 2007, that they had them for sale the past 2 years. We learned that it really was economic factors that limited the RA7 development, which is a fit. The majority is RA7, and to the south it's RF1, which provides that transition that's vital. We found out that Ebenezer was at that point in contract subject to the RA8 zoning, and that Points West was involved. On that date, Ebenezer assured us that a representative from Points West would be there at the next meeting, the meeting with the community, and that they would get us plans. And so we then proceeded with scheduling a meeting. Then what came up on June 12th was Ebenezer sent a flyer out to the community, not 2/3 of the community. We had asked that go to the ARP area, and that didn't happen. Contrary to what you heard yesterday, I'm confident in telling council there was not a door knocked. Contrary to what Bart Golightly said, we had a post-meeting debrief last night, and I think at least a dozen people on the Zoom call confirmed that there was no, there certainly was no knock. For us, we have a ring system, and there certainly was no knock. There was a flyer with 3 dates, and those dates weren't followed. So the first date we actually did meet, the proposed date had been June 19th. The first date that we did meet was on June 25th. And on June 25th, again, going into that, we'd asked if they'd be open to a DC1. There was no response going into the meeting. And we asked for the scaled renderings, which we didn't hear back from them. So then the June 25th meeting happens, and that was a real problem in my respectful submission. What we found out there was that there was a significant change in terms of what council had been told. The number of units jumped from 62 to 80. The underground parking went from underground to above ground and underground. In terms of plans, we were told that, the builder finally conceded, we don't know the exact numbers. Their plans are not finalized yet. And what the developer, Ebenezer, told us was, we're not the developer. We're just here for zoning. Points West is the developer. The problem is they didn't bring Points West to the table on June 25th. And what Kerry Daly said was, here's the problem. A lot of these questions, and our questions, council, ranged from not just height, but density and impact, safety, privacy. I'm over my time, but we don't have 30 speakers. We had dropped it down to 10 for 30 minutes. And if I may just have one more minute, I'll just finish up here.
No, we've provided extra time on the front end, so we're going to have to stick to the 5 minutes, I'm afraid. Questions for Mr. Oliver? Councillor Caterina?
Yeah, thank you for that this morning and that. I think we're at a point here now where a reset, I think, is warranted by both the proponent and the community to start this again. I think this referral back, and I hope you would agree with that and get some commentary from you on that, that the commitment is there. We understand what the issues are, all of them. Unfortunately, Anthony, and a DC will give you that opportunity to get whatever you need to get as far as this application goes, because a DC requires those plans and address everything else that you're concerned with along with the community. So I don't want to stop anybody from speaking, but I think that with Ebenezer making that concession to go to a DC, or their suggestion to go to a DC, will give the community that opportunity to weigh in on this and certainly address all the concerns that you have because of the prescriptive nature of DCs that we can hold the developer to. Anthony?
Yes, sir. Councillor Caterina, thanks so much. And thanks for the consultation with the community and your work on this matter. I certainly myself would agree with you on that point. I think the community's resounding concern is that all the way up to August 25th, the response from Ebenezer was, we don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, their words, and also that they don't want to spend money on plans. And so the problem was, we'd come to them with ideas, or we'd come to them with an earnest desire to engage, and there was nothing to work on in terms of footprint, height, shape, and density use. all of these things we wanted to engage, but they ultimately told us that it was going to be left to the planning, to the zone, to the permit stage. And then the last meeting on site there, they said we may sell it, and it may not even be a senior center. So yes, you're totally correct. The DC certainly provides us, the community, with greater security, but most importantly, a means to actually actively engage. So I myself would welcome that, as long as it's not just simply restricted to height.
Yeah, no, I think we've heard that commitment loud and clear. Again, now on the record, obviously, if that isn't fulfilled with the DC application, there are going to be certainly ramifications for the proponent in that, and I'm going to take Mr. Daly's commitment to working with the community. They've learned their lessons as well too, I think, in this process, and I'd like to get to the point now where we start new, and you have that opportunity to weigh in as much as you want, and I hope the proponent offers you all those opportunities to do that, or else we will be hearing back from the community of whether that happened or not, and hopefully this project, when and if it gets going, will be supported by the community with your input. So
I think that was an open question, Mr. Oliver.
Oh, sorry, sir. Yes, Councillor Katarina, I agree. I mean, I think Mr. Daly has been the most honest, and Bart Golightly, I think, has been uninformed. I think Mr. Daly's been the most genuine of all of them. This really is about recovery of money for them. So if they're now being directed by you again to come to the table, to actively engage us, to meet at the table with plans so that we can go over things, absolutely. I would just say, in that, given their performance, it's clear that unless you make it clear that they need to engage us in terms of the full spectrum of issues here, it just won't happen, and we're just going to go through the process again. So I would just ask, the one, I think, concession I'd ask, sir, is that the amendment, or that the referral, be one where it's not just simply a reduction in height, but really it's just to return with a direct control, and that could be a mix of RA7 at the south with a greater setback, RA7 at the west with a greater setback to mitigate some of the concerns about how tight it is in that space. So that's the one thing I'd ask, sir, if it could be left a bit more open so that the developer does need to engage us about the spectrum of issues.
Okay. Well, the referral does specify that the applicant engage with the residents of Cromdale community and for our administration to work with them in order to engage with the community. So you're okay with that, and our administration obviously would have all the wherewithal and the knowledge of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, that sort of thing. So is there any part of this referral that you want changed? I understand you want it more open. So I'll ask administration that question on your behalf.
Thank you, Councillor. Your
Time is up.
time's over there. So, Councillor Banga?
Just a couple more questions and maybe a little bit of commentary. Mr. Oliver, first of all, I know that things did not go as planned or as they should have been going in the past, but in your mind, with this referral motion, you think there is room for some kind of smoother moving ahead?
Yes, Councillor Banga, I certainly do. I think that what we found, for example, in June, it became clear that we were told that there were drawings rendered. Then their realtor said, I lost them.
Then Carrie Daly said, no, we never had them, and we don't want to go to that expense until the permit stage. And then when the full community meeting happened on June 25th, things really started to fall apart because suddenly there were changes to the number of units. So I think, and to the parking. And then the subsequent meeting where we were told the site may be sold and it may not be a seniors complex. The direct control can protect that and mitigate some of the concerns of the community. But really, I think this is about pushing the developer to come to the table to actively engage us. You know, what they did was they, right off the bat, proposed 3 meetings, and we said, well, hang on. Let's get some background information and meet first, then work on plans, then come back again. There was true desire on our part for that. So if the referral can be crafted in a manner that achieves that, I think it's just important not to simply say, what I'd ask to be removed is that it's simply a matter of height, because it's not just that. And I think that still the concerns the community have about the R8 are still extremely valid, given that it's such a, it doesn't even fit into a local node, this space. So, and it really is a gateway into the green corridor for the northeast and exhibition lands that will open. So if it's crafted in a manner that it's a DC generally, and that we can engage the developer in all aspects, I think Councillor Caterina is correct that they will get the picture that they risk losing this altogether. And I hope Mr. Daly will direct his team to actually start being more cohesive internally and to engage us meaningfully, because that's what we've tried to do the past 120 days.
A little more open-ended to keep them at the table. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Banga?
No, I just want to
Okay,
thank.
if it's commentary, well, let's hold that till we speak to it.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Oliver? Not seeing any. Then this is just confined to the question of referral here. So, and just to be clear, if referral fails, then we will resume the public hearing and hear from all of the speakers on the application that's before us. But if referral passes, then that will start a new process effectively that would lead hopefully one day back to a public hearing before too long. So debate on the motion on referral. Councillor McKean, if you could take the chair.
The chair.
Thank you. So I'll just ask the mover, Councillor Caterina. I mean, I think we've heard the feedback from Mr. Oliver that limiting it strictly to reflecting the RA8 with the exception of the reduction in height may not address all of the questions that have come up around built form and transition, parking, some of the other requirements. And so I'm wondering about whether that's too specific at this stage. I mean, I believe a medium density mid-rise building of some kind, a little more tailored than a stock RA8 makes sense here. But I don't have enough information, and there hasn't been enough engagement clearly to determine exactly what that should look like. I also want it to be economically viable and buildable and meet housing needs in our city. And so there's going to have to be some give and take around that. And so I guess the question is your thoughts on either adjusting or striking the explicit reference to reflecting the RA8 zone, and just to leave some room for some negotiation there, so it isn't bound to the conventional zone as tightly. What would be your feelings about that?
Yeah, I certainly agree. Going back to this and Mr. Oliver's comments on that, certainly with the direct control, I'd like the community to have sort of the full benefit of that in weighing in on the direct control provision. So I'm going to suggest, and Mr. Johnson, you can guide me on this, that right after direct control provisions, that reflects the RA8 zone except with a reduction in height be struck from the referral, to leave it a little more open-ended. And certainly we've had enough discussion here that both the proponent and the community understand going to direct control what that means.
Yes, Councillor, I agree with your comments, and removing those words is simply all that would be required. You have broad discretion with referrals, and so, yes.
So
Okay. I'm happy to move that unless it's friendly
Councillor,
to
if
the
I just
assembly.
may add, in terms of opening it up into a complete direct control without any direction to address specific edges or height, it may lead us down a very different path that includes a very robust design process and very far away from, I guess, the standard zone. Just cautioning that this has the potential to increase the time and costs exponentially.
Understood with that, but I think that where we've gotten to at this point, there has to be that flexibility there for the community to be able to vocalize what their concerns are, and those need to be addressed at this point. And I think we're going to have opportunity for the proponent to speak to this or not. We're at the point now where the referral is on the floor with this amendment to it, and that's what we're voting on. So thank you for the commentary on that.
Maybe there's a different way to go, which is, because there's two ways to do it. One would be to chisel down from RA8. The other would be to stack on RA7. I think chiseling from RA8 is still where I would start, but if we think about the issues that were identified, there are questions around site configuration, questions about transition to abutting uses, and questions about height, I think, were the principal themes. So rather than eliminating the reference to RA8, we could enumerate the particular questions that have come up generally from the community. So I think we've got a couple of options on this. I think we should consider that. Because I take your point, Mr. Pollock, about if it's a sort of tabula rasa DC, that's one thing. If it's modifications to stock zoning, that's a different matter in terms of the scope and design work required. So I'm going back and forth on that a little bit, which is not that helpful, but appreciate the Q&A. So. Any other thoughts? I'll take the chair back.
Return the chair.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Suggestions from members of council? Maybe I'll go back to the mover then.
Do you need 5 minutes, Mr. Mayor, to craft a motion, or?
What do you think?
There's a potential option that we just came up with if we can just send it over.
Sure. Well, why don't we take a quick recess here, just to look at a couple different options. Maybe there's a substitute set of wording for the referral. So rather than hash that out, let's just take a 5-minute recess and see if we can workshop something here and come back. So unless there's any objection, 5-minute recess? Okay. All right. So let's pause here, come back at 10:55. Should I roll call back councillors to be on the safe side? Okay. Councillor Walters? How about Councillor Banga? Oh, I did tell them 10:55. And they're usually, I'm sure they're counting on that to be Ivison time, which is more like 10:57 or 11. So we'll give them another minute here before we come back. Okay, let's try again to call back to order. Councillor Walters?
Present.
Awesome. Councillor Banga?
Present.
Great. Councillor Carmel?
Good morning.
Hello. Councillor Katarina?
Good morning.
Still here. Councillor Zadig?
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Essinger?
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Knack?
Good morning.
And Councillor McKean?
Hello.
Councillor Nickel?
Good morning.
Councillor Paquette?
I'm here.
Everybody's back. Okay, so a little bit of conferring with administration on some options around this, and the suggestion is that in addition to the height reduction, that some wording be added about the transition considerations, and that will broaden the opportunities for discussion with the community about some of the issues that have been raised. And so I will check with Councillor Katarina if the addition of, I don't have the words in front of me here. Do you have them? Okay, would be reflects the RA8 zone while addressing the transition to adjacent properties and a reduction in height. So that would be restating that clause. Is there any objection to that change? That works for you, Councillor Katarina?
No, that would be fine. That consider that friendly and I think addresses what we heard.
Any objections from members of council to that restatement? Okay, well, we'll make that as a friendly change to the referral motion then, based on the discussion. So, okay, is there any further debate on the referral motion? And just to be clear for community members here, this would send it back and start a further engagement process. The second part of the motion explicitly requires that engagement, and direct controls require and stipulate a deeper level of engagement as well, which is an opportunity for issues to be raised in addition to height and transition. Obviously, those are the main ones that council has flagged, but it is an open process, so there are opportunities to raise other issues and for some brokerage and some give and take there. And I guess I'm speaking to it right now. So, Councillor McKean, if you could take the chair.
Take the chair?
Yeah. So I'm going to support referral. I understand folks may have more input today, but we're trying to create a space for constructive input into how to make something work on this site that satisfies the conversion of the lands from idle use today to something that will be of benefit to the broader community, to meet a variety of different kinds of housing needs. We've heard that that may include seniors. Again, council's not in a position where we can demand that, but the more certainty that is there in terms of at least a conceptual design and the work the applicant will have to do to provide elevations and some of the other kinds of details in a direct control, the more assurance the community would have that a concept is tracking towards a particular kind of use. And I know that there is concern about what the default would be and some fear about what if it was low-rise apartments. I'm not sure it would be the end of the world if we rezoned this whole site to RA7 and it was developed as low-rise apartments. I'd be supportive of that if that application was in front of us today, just to put a bit of a floor under the discussion. But I think a little bit more height, provided some of the questions of transition and understanding that the applicant is not looking to use the full height of the RA8 in any instance, creates an opportunity for some discussion and some give and take there. At which time, you know, if it's not satisfactory or the process engagement is not sufficient for the community, if that is again the case, and I think we heard the applicant concede that that was the case this last time, then council, when this comes back, doesn't have to approve the proposal. So the community still has plenty of opportunity to engage, but I think it will be a more fruitful use of everyone's time to go and not go back to an entirely blank sheet of paper. I think it's fair to say we are looking at some sort of a low to mid-rise project on this site. But I think, you know, as has been a theme through this hearing, there are some challenges with abrupt transitions from medium density and mid-rise uses to adjacent low density developments, and that that introduces some challenges when we're using conventional zones. Here we have an applicant willing to address some of those challenges and undertake the expense and complexity of a direct control, and I appreciate that willingness to do that and the engagement that's required as a part of that. And so I'll be supporting the referral motion here today, and hope that something in between will come forward that, while it may not satisfy all community concerns about the change coming to the neighborhood, at least some of those community concerns can be addressed in good faith through the engagement process required for a direct control. So I'll be supporting this referral here today. I'll take the chair back.
Return the chair.
Anybody else wishing to speak to referral before I go to Councillor Caterina to close? Councillor Caterina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to the proponent, thanks to the community for your involvement in this. As I said before, I hope that this will restart the process, not from the beginning again. That site is going to be developed at some point in time, and it needs to be developed. It's been empty for a long, long time, with the work being done across the street with the exhibition lands, and that there are more changes to come to the community. And I think that the proponent now understands the involvement or the level of involvement that the community would like to participate in, and has the energy to do that. And I hope that the community understands now that the proponent is willing to, I guess, learn from what has happened in the past, and that's in this referral motion. I think from my perspective, engagement with the community is probably the most direct direction that we have here with this. And again, as the mayor said, hopefully everybody comes to the table, faithful discussion of what the issues are, and that there's really a significant dialogue in order to get this project moving, or this site redeveloped sooner rather than later. So at that point, Mr. Mayor, I hope that referral passes, and that both sides sort of start this process again, and this time with much better results.
Thank you. Please vote on referral.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina.
Yes.
I'm a yes, Madam Clerk.
We're just refreshing the system again to try and get the vote out. Mr.
Want me
Mayor, I
to-
think we
want
may
me to
need
roll
to do a
call it?
roll call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Counselor Banga on referral,
Yes.
Counselor Carmel,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Zadek,
Yes.
Counselor Essinger,
Yes.
Counselor Knack,
Yes.
Counselor McKean,
Yes.
Counselor Nickel,
Yes.
Counselor Paquette,
Yes.
Counselor Walters.
Yeah, yes.
I'm a yes as well, so the ayes have it unanimously. So that is referred, and that concludes the business unless there are any subsequent motions arising from the public hearings here today and yesterday. Not seeing any. Are there notices of motion? Not hearing any. Then this public hearing is adjourned.